Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to see all of you. I hope that last night you were able to participate in our back to school night. I can say for my part, I was actually texting Yvonne last night because she's a parent, so I knew she was going in and like participating as a parent and asking her how it was going. It was so weird for me though to just be at home and like I had recorded my video beforehand, and so like I had done my part, and we were just manning. We had the help Zoom form, where the administrators and the counselors and advisors we were all manning that form to send Zoom codes to parents who needed it, and so that was really all that we were doing. And I just like, it feels so weird. It's back to school night and I'm not in the hallway seeing all the parents and like telling people where to go. For me, it had a really weird feel. But hopefully for you guys as parents, it went okay. I had participated in my daughter's back to school night for her high school Tuesday night, so the night before. And so I kind of like gotten to feel what it looks like as a parent. And so it was okay. Hopefully it was good for you guys. I know it's not the same, but at least hopefully you got to see your child's teacher and get some type of idea of what it's going to be like this year. But today, our topic is managing stress and anxiety. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Gunter in just a minute. But, this is a topic that is, so important right now. All of us, every single person is under a tremendous amount of stress right now. We all have increased anxiety. Like this is just something that is just part of our life. I was actually listening to a podcast as I was getting dressed this morning, and they were talking about how at this point, in this pandemic, we're 6 months in. We're 6 months into, this new reality that we're living under. And, do we get used to it? And what does that do? Like, do we actually feel like a little bit less stressed because we're getting used to it? I know for my part, I don't get as stressed about like, oh, I have to go to the grocery store. I know I have to wear a mask. I know I have to like wait, and like you get used to that part. I think now, especially for all of us as parents, our new stress is our kids and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Any parents that have kids that are just going to like do their schoolwork and get on their Zooms like they're supposed to, and you don't have to worry about them. I'm so jealous of you. My daughter, she'll get on her Zooms pretty much. But I have to like constantly be checking her grades. Like, did you turn in this assignment? You haven't turned this in. What are you doing? My son, my 11-year-old, if I don't, or my husband, because he's the one that's home right now, if we don't log him into his Zooms and press start and like make sure he gets in, he would just like be like playing Fortnite on his iPad all day and living his best life. And like, no, I'm good. I don't care about school. So we have to be on him. And so that's just an added layer of stress and just, what we're having to do right now. So Ms. Gunter and I, when we talked about this topic, like we didn't want to just, I think venting about our stress is important too. And like having that outlet with each other as parents to like, and like just let it go and have that. But also we wanted to talk about how do we manage this and how do we help our kids learn how to manage this? So I am going to stop sharing my screen. Ms. Gunter, you are up.
I have never shared my screen, so bear with me while I do that. I think it's important that you mention that 6 months, because when we're diagnosing stress and anxiety, those kind of things, when we're talking about chronic stress, prolonged stress, 6 months is like the marker of like, okay, now you've reached this new territory of stress that's starting to damage your body. So I've been very like aware right now of like, okay, we just hit 6 months and this is something that I didn't know was going to happen. And so this just created this this firestorm of stress. I don't know if you guys caught this on the news yesterday. Okay, I'm gonna try to share my screen. I hope I do it right. It's kind of a disaster. My students kind of laugh when I try to do that. Okay. There was an article. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. It's actually like this whole new world for dentists. And you go through this article and it's basically saying that these dentists have seen more cracked teeth in the last 6 weeks than they've seen in their entire practice. And some of the doctors that are speaking in here have been dentists for 20 years. And knowing the amount of the toll that stress is taking on our bodies. I don't know if anybody's a teeth grinder. I just actually had a crown replaced, and when I was reading this, I'm like, oh my gosh, it totally makes sense. I actually wake up sometimes and my jaw is super clenched, even on the days where I didn't feel like I was really stressing out about anything. It's just so embedded in me right now to be worried about something, that, not only is it taking its toll on our minds and just like our daily to-dos, but like our bodies are suffering for it. So I'm going to go into this presentation, and I adjusted it a little bit. I had done this one back in the spring with parents, but obviously we have new stressors that are coming up right now. So let me just organize myself a little bit. So we're going to talk about, stress and anxiety, what contributes to that. And I'll do a little bit on anxiety disorders. I'll probably just share the presentation so you can kind of read through that, and you can reach out to me if you have any questions, because I really wanted to spend some time, brainstorming with you and allowing you guys to share, how things are going in your homes and how you guys are all managing. So if you've been in my anxiety trainings before, you've probably heard my story, but I'll briefly share. I was kind of always an anxious kid. I was kind of that kid where if my parents came home late, I thought something terrible happened to them. I never really thought of that as anxiety. I thought that was normal. When I was a senior in high school, I had my first anxiety attack, and it was terrifying. And it happened about a month before graduation, and it was so overwhelming for me that I ended up not continuing high school, because I couldn't do it. And prior to that, I had really good grades. I, had a scholarship to go to college. I had all these plans for myself, and it just completely derailed me. Fortunately, I was a student athlete, and I think I went to a small private school, and I think my teachers felt sorry for me. So somehow I got a diploma, which was pretty amazing. But that was the beginning of a really long and painful journey of very debilitating anxiety. I ended up going to San Jose State for about 6 weeks, and I dropped out. I was actually trying to get into a nursing program at that time. And even being out of my house was very terrifying for me. When people think of stress and anxiety, they think of worry. But what happens with untreated anxiety is that it can develop into agoraphobia, people who can't leave their houses. It can just get really, really terrible. And that's kind of what happened for me. I spent most of my 20s in my house. I did have children, and it was very difficult to raise them when you didn't drive and I didn't work. And it was just kind of this shell of a person at that point. And I didn't know what was wrong. And when I gave birth to my third son, I had really bad postpartum depression. And when I received treatment for the postpartum depression, thankfully, it also treated the anxiety. And so I was probably 31 at the time. So like 13 years had gone by, and they're very blurry now, but I don't really have too many fond memories of the time. And so it kind of, I met a social worker. She pretty much showed me the light and helped me get the right treatment. And it just kind of spurred this passion in me to like reach out to teenagers who are going through anxiety and letting them know that like there's treatment for this. This isn't something that you have to suffer with forever. And so it just became my goal to be able to reach teenagers who, haven't gone through their 20s yet and still have time to get well, without, kind of wasting all those years. And so, I'm very honored that these kiddos let me be a part of their life in such a private way, and so that's why I do what I do. So if you have a piece of paper, if you can just remember these things, this is kind of a quiz for yourselves. And so I'm going to give about maybe 3 or 4 minutes to finish this. And what I want you to do is I just want you to tally a number for each of these things that you can relate with. And I'll read them, but as I'm reading them, just start counting. In the past week, have you felt swamped by your responsibilities? I'm going to tell you my own because I know it's been a week. Excuse me, swamped by your responsibilities, unmotivated, feeling that there wasn't enough time to get everything finished, feeling like you disappointed somebody. Have any of you felt exhausted? Like you have a lot on your mind? That you're overcommitted between work and your children and your families? Have you felt like drinking alcohol to deal with stress? Has anyone felt just completely fatigued by the end of the day, or that stress is negatively impacting your life? Have you been worried about your health? This is a new one for a lot of people. A lot of people are worried about getting sick. Do you feel like things keep piling up on you, that you can't get ahead of your to-do list? Like you don't have time to breathe? Has anybody felt irritable? Like there's too much to do and too little time? Or have you felt like nothing was going right? Have you found it difficult to fall asleep or stay asleep? Have you felt at all like you are neglecting to care for yourself? Spend a lot of time caring for our families and not always a lot of time caring for ourselves. Like there's no time to spend with your loved ones? Have you felt like your muscles were tense? And have you felt like crying? So I'm gonna give you a minute to go ahead and go over and just kind of count up your numbers. I had put a little tally on here from the last time I did this presentation, and I think I had a couple less questions on there, but my number is literally double right now than it was when we did this last time. So if you guys want, if you're comfortable with it and you want to share, even speak out and share, if your number surprised you, if you knew that this was kind of where you were. I'm going to be totally honest. My number was 19. 19 out of 21. I think that's an A, right, Ginny?
That is an A, yeah.
How about you? How'd you do?
I actually got a 9, which I was a little bit surprised about. Yeah. I think in some ways, I feel like I've made some changes in my life that it's helping me a lot with my stress right now. So yeah, I feel like if I had done this in June, May, definitely May, my answers, I would have been more like a 19. But yeah.
I feel like if I would have done this last week, I would have been like a 10.
Yeah, it's like some of us, it definitely depends on the week too.
Does anybody want to share? No pressure.
Hi, Mark here. I just, my own impression was I'll pick out the ones that I don't relate to, and it was easier to do that than to choose the ones that I do relate to, and I came out with a 13. So, but a lot of this stuff is spot on. Swamped, sure. I mean, I don't go to work anymore, which is great, good, not a stress thing for me. But I'm still swamped by my responsibilities. I thought, wow, I'm gonna have all kinds of free time to do stuff. And I do, but I'm still swamped. There's never enough time. Anyway,
Thank you for sharing. It's true. Just if you're not working, there's still a ton of things to be done and a lot of things to stress over. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just adolescents in general and why they're more prone to stress. This week, I think for me has been the week where, I don't know if it was that it was the marking period or what's going on, but I've had a ton of kids reach out to me. And so I know this is something that's really impacting them right now. I'm getting referrals from teachers about kids who are, unable to show up for their Zoom, that they're feeling overwhelmed, just all these different referrals. And, it has a lot to do with, physically where they are with puberty, with, if they're using substances, things like that. Just the emotional changes of being a teenager. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate if somebody's struggling with a mental health issue or if they're just being a teenager. And that's something we'll talk a little bit about. Socially, I know things are a lot different right now. And for the students that I've noticed that are very social, this has been very difficult for them. And so just acknowledging that all of our students are handling things a lot differently. So stress is the change our body and our mind have in response to our changing environment. And so stress is actually intended to be a good and healthy thing. It can help us. It can keep us safe. It can keep us motivated to do things. You have a deadline. That's something that, you might feel more inclined to get work done if you know that there's people waiting on you and that kind of stress. So again, good and bad. It can be a motivator for you. It can protect you. It can raise your alertness. But on the bad end, when it's high or when it's chronic, it acts as a demotivator. It increases the risk for depression, health issues, decreased focus. I don't know if you've ever heard students say, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. I can't even wrap my mind around one thing. I can't focus. I can't make decisions. Sometimes we'll see decreased energy. So if you haven't seen this before, this is the stress curve. And this is basically in the yellow area right here is our optimum stress level. Anything less than that maybe might make us a little laid back. Like if I didn't have any pressure to do work and I just kind of could laze around and not have anything to worry about, that's too little stress. I'm underloaded. It's not really a healthy level for me. When we get into here, this is our optimum stress level. This is where we want to be. We're feeling the heat, we're feeling the pressure, but it's not completely overwhelming. And then where I'm seeing a lot of students, even this early in the school year, is here, too much stress, overloaded, exhausted. And we have to keep in mind now, not only is it our academics, but it's just the pressures of being in the house with our family and all these new things that we haven't had to experience before, spending every single day for the past 6 months, in the house with 3 boys and my husband is, lovely family time sometimes, but other times it's just, you need a minute to just catch your breath and you can't get that. And that's when we get into stress and anxiety and panic and burnout. I have never had as many cases as I do right now of seniors who are straight A students up until this year who are shutting down. And when I say shut down, I mean not attending class, not sure if they want to go to college, can't, get motivated to even turn on their cameras. And that is alarming because, they're so close to graduation. And I wish I had a number for you all, but I would say probably in the last 2 weeks, I've had maybe 7 or 8 cases like this where, oh my gosh, my student has always done fantastically. I've never had to think about it. And literally I cannot pull them up. I cannot get them out of bed to get the things done that they need to do. And, it's heartbreaking when you see students who've worked so hard for 3 years and then all of a sudden they just cannot force themselves to do this. And it's a hard spot to be in because I always say, your health and your mental health first. And it is heartbreaking to see, that they could actually be at risk for not graduating. And so, I've been dealing with a few students that are in that situation, and it just goes to show, where are we in that stress curve? And it's like they started the school year already in the orange and the red. I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID and what this does to us. There are so many, and this is so obvious, and there's probably things on here that I'm not mentioning, but Financial stress. You know, I think you guys may have seen part of the survey that I sent out to the kids of where they're feeling. Students are worried about their family's finances, their family's health, you know, fear of catching the virus themselves, stress of school, just long periods without, you know, social outlets. And when I talk to students about the healthy things they need to do to keep their sanity, it involves a lot of things that they're not allowed to do right now. You know, hanging out with your friends, going out and getting fresh air. You know, thankfully we've had some fresh air in the last couple of days. But pretty much my to-do list and my kind of safety plan for them are things that they're really not allowed to do. You know, even coming to school provides an outlet and gives them kind of a safe place to be outside of the home. And without having that, it's like we're just seeing so much more stress. I shared a little last week about, you know, suicide crisis lines. Their numbers are up 300% across the country. You know, our hospitals where kids are hospitalized for suicidal ideation or suicide attempts are waitlisted, which I've never even heard of. I didn't even know that was a thing. And so just seeing the gravity that this stress and anxiety is taking on top of, you know, for a lot of our kids, high school is one of the most stressful periods of their life. So now we're adding something that we couldn't even have dreamed of. So, you know, a little bit about acute stress. I talked about chronic stress being like over 6 months. You know, acute stress is short term. That's what our bodies were designed for. Our bodies were designed to run away from danger briefly and then retreat back into our homes. Our bodies were not designed to have prolonged stress. And our students are under prolonged stress right now, and how they're coping might look different depending on your kiddo. Maybe they're not sleeping well. Maybe they're more irritable. Maybe you're seeing that they're just locked in their rooms more often. These are just like typical adolescent stressors. Again, this is just stuff that now we're adding to the stress of just living in 2020, you know, school and grades and family conflict and, you know, having a culture of achievement and feeling like they're defined by their grades, conflict with their friends, lack of sleep, competition, being overscheduled. I know this has probably changed a bit. There's not a whole lot of activities that students are able to be in, but still being overscheduled with their classes. Social media, self-image, people are spending so much more time online now. And so the issues that we've had with social media and self-image and things like that are like exponentially greater right now. And it's, you know, again, taking a toll. And so I typically go, actually, I'll read a little bit of this for you guys. These are referrals or comments that I've gotten from students in the past week. And so I updated this from what I had last year. A student this week: I feel like I'm getting more work than I can handle. I've just shut down and don't even know where to start. Referral from a teacher: student has no motivation to come to school and she's a straight A student. She doesn't see the point of doing her work because she always has more to do. She doesn't want to attend school and doesn't know how to do better. This is an email from a student. Hi, Miss Gunter, not sure how much longer I can hang on. I was doing so good and hadn't cut myself in over a year. Today, all I can think about is that I told my mom how stressed I was feeling and she literally said, suck it up. This was another referral that I got. This one I got last week. 4.0 student for the past 3 years. After several absences, I called her and she told me that she's been having panic attacks. She has not turned in one assignment since school started. And so what I always tell parents, looking for big changes in behavior. And a lot of times it's evident through school. Like, are they not doing their work? Are they not doing the things that they've normally done? So this was just this week, which is probably why I'm at a 19. Now, when we're talking about stress, as parents, we're fixers. I always tell people, there was nothing worse than anxiety except watching your kid experience anxiety and really having like no power over how to do that. And so this is just a list of things that are not helpful. Sometimes I just have to remind myself, if my kid is telling me something, I just have to listen. And I just want to fix it so bad because I feel like I know how to do that, but calm down. It's all in your head. These are all things that just invalidate their feelings. For them, those feelings are real right now. You'll be fine. We give you everything you need. Sometimes parents personalize it. Like if your kiddo's depressed or anxious, it's like, oh my gosh, I give them everything. What do I do? I do everything. Stop thinking about it. Think about all the good things you have. You know, we provide everything for you. What could you possibly have to worry about? Other things that are not helpful would be like over coddling your kids, protecting them from everything. You know, sometimes I think they call them snowplow parents, where you literally just want to plow all the stress out of their way and give them this clear path. That's like the opposite end of the spectrum. That's also not healthy for them. You know, not helpful, you know, assuming that they're using the anxiety to manipulate you. And although I'm sure there's a few cases where that happens, a lot of times it's not truly manipulation. It's them trying to express to you how they're feeling. You know, it's not helpful to get angry. You know, culturally, in our like Mexican family, I tell everybody everything about my kids. And so that's something that I've had to stop doing because my kids aren't exactly excited when the whole family knows all of their business. So telling others without their permission. Another common one is one-upping them. You know, when they say, I'm so stressed with school. Well, how do you think it feels to provide for a family? That's super stressful. You know, that's one-upping them and minimizing their feelings. So these are just tips of like what's not helpful. I'm going to play this quick video, and this just talks a little bit about anxiety versus stress.
This is Stephanie and Juliet. Stephanie is feeling nervous because she has a huge deadline tomorrow. Stephanie is stressed. Juliet is feeling nervous for an unknown reason. Juliet has anxiety. Stephanie goes over her annual budget. It's extremely stressful. Juliet finally has a moment to herself. She still feels anxious. Stephanie has a conversation with Juliet. She enjoys the conversation. Juliet has a conversation with Stephanie. She feels uncomfortable and will later overanalyze everything she said. Stephanie decides to take a break and have lunch. She feels recharged. Juliet decides to take a break and have lunch. She still feels anxious. Stephanie sleeps after a long day at work. She's happy to finally put the day behind her. Juliet can't sleep. She goes over her schedule for tomorrow over and over again. Yes, stress can be difficult, but it's not the same as having an anxiety disorder. When someone opens up about their anxiety, don't respond with, I've been stressed too. Listen.
Like I said in the beginning, I'm going to kind of pass over this and, you know, allow you guys to kind of read through. It's a lot of information, but basically just talking about anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders is the umbrella term. And underneath that, you'll find things like panic disorder, generalized anxiety, which is basically excessive worry that you're not able to shut off. PTSD is under the anxiety umbrella, as are, you know, phobias, fear of spiders, fear of heights, you know, and then OCD is something that you'll also hear about. So again, I'm just going to kind of skip through these just because I really want to hear from you. Anxiety, what it feels like. People ask this all the time, like, what does it truly feel like? And the best way that I can describe it is thinking of the most frightening scenario that you could come up with. One of the ones that I always kind of go back to is it happened last year where my son was playing baseball with Piedmont. He was supposed to take the bus home from school. It was about 7 o'clock. He should have already been home, and it turns to 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I call his cell phone, nothing. 10 o'clock. 11 o'clock, it's midnight, and my son was supposed to be home. At that point, I had called the police, I called the baseball team, I called everybody. Nobody heard from him. I followed every bus in the area, and I was convinced that something horrible had happened. And just think of the, like, I don't want to like make you think of it, but really something of that degree of like just terror. Thankfully, he was safe. And that adrenaline response, you get your heart races. That feeling happens for people with anxiety for no reason, like out of the blue. You can be sitting in class, you could be driving in your car, and you literally physically get the same response that you would get in one of those very, very scary situations. You can't describe it. And that's one thing that kids always say. It's like, I can't even tell you, Miss Gunter, like what it feels like inside of me. It's just terrifying. And I feel this sense of impending doom, like something horrible is going to happen. It's terrifying, and we all react differently to it. You know, they talk about the fight or flight response. Some people have a fight response where they, you know, tense and their fists are ready to go. Some people have the flight response where they just want to run away from the situation. And then we have students who freeze. And I think that's a lot of what I'm seeing this year with the kids who are just completely shutting down with school, is that freeze response. You probably heard the term panic attack, you know, heart palpitations, just that sudden rush of terror. Again, part of the anxiety disorders. So I'm going to skip through these. This is one that I mostly see with teenagers, not necessarily panic attacks, but that generalized anxiety, feeling restless and wound up and always something to do in their mind and replaying scenarios in their head. Worry, worry, worry. You know, you'll have kids who, even from a young age, have worried about everything under the sun. These kiddos most of the time find it difficult to sleep, difficult to concentrate, always brain moving. I'm gonna pass through this. Okay, this little monster here, I have no idea why he's on my screen, and I have this sneaky suspicion that one of my children put it there, so I apologize. Treatment options. Sometimes just checking in with somebody is enough. Most of the time with severe anxiety, it requires talk therapy and likely medication. A lot of times this is biological. If you have a family history, we do things like exposure therapy for students who have phobias or afraid to come on campus. I've had several students where I've had to create a plan of getting them to campus and slowly getting them into school. You know, there's different lifestyle changes that we can use. I always feel like, you know, anxiety is this very big, complicated thing that has to be kind of attacked from every angle. And every angle meaning using a professional, having a supportive team around you, using alternative approaches like, you know, meditation and things like that, just, you know, exercising, having healthy lifestyles. Like, there's not one answer. You know, I've had students ask me too, like, Ms. Gunter, how did you get through it? And I tell them, like, I wish I had one solid answer for you, but it was really like a full-time job to get well. And so knowing in advance that, you know, if your kiddo is suffering with anxiety, it's going to be a lot of work for your family, but it's going to be worth it when you get to the other side. These are ways that we can help our kids, you know, monitoring their sleep. I know that's difficult right now. Kids aren't sleeping very well. You know, their schedules are all messed up. My son swears that he only socializes at night and it's important for him. So I've kind of picked my battles on his bedtime, you know, listening, not demanding perfection from them, but also from yourself, you know, providing healthy food, encouraging them to spend time with their friends, even if that means it's on video games or online, praising their efforts and not just their outcomes, their grades, talking to their doctor, being open for support, talking a little bit about this, like how we handle our stress, like modeling healthy coping strategies. You know, I don't think it's super healthy for me to show my kids that sometimes when I'm really stressed, I buy things on Amazon, you know, modeling that self-care and modeling the fact that I spend 30 minutes a day for myself, for nobody else. And some people think that's selfish, but showing them that I'm important enough that I require 30 minutes of me time, and it's okay for them to do that too. Push them to avoid avoiding. You know, I have a child who still refuses to order in a restaurant. Their anxiety is so high. And I used to kind of coddle them. And now it's something where, you know, if you want to eat, I need you to do this. And lastly, like, don't take it personally if they don't want to talk to you. I tell people all the time, 300 kids at school in line to talk to me and 3 at home that couldn't really care less if I talked to them. So just knowing that it's not personal and giving them permission to speak to somebody else if they felt more comfortable. These are the ways to get in touch with me. If you ever have any like questions or consult or worries about your kiddos, I'll do my best to help you out in that situation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can, did I do that right, Ginny?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Yes.
Oh, no, it's okay. So I know that was like a lot, and, you know, anxiety is everything from just a little basic worry to a full-on pandemic meltdown to panic disorder and all these things. And, you know, again, there's nothing more frightening than knowing that your kid is not okay and not really knowing what to do to help them. but I think for starters, being here is already helping them. Whether or not your child has an anxiety disorder, just knowing that you're open to hearing information about it is more than, when I was struggling, we didn't have anything like that. And it wasn't really something that we talked about. And my mom is very tough. She's very pull yourself up kind of person. And so it's really important for me to kind of spread that awareness of hey, sometimes just listen, be gentle, be gentle with you, be gentle with your kiddos. So I would love to hear any experiences. I know Miss Davis and I have talked about our experiences with our kiddos and anxiety, but is this something that you're seeing, you're worrying about? How are your kids managing this? How are you managing this?
Well, let me just jump in, because as you were talking and presenting, I was getting a text from my son's teacher that he doesn't have his camera on in the Zoom, and he's not responding to the prompts, just to chat, because he is such anxiety about having the camera on. And his district is a little ridiculous that they're requiring that. I mean, they're working with us, but again, it's, I think on your suggestions for parents, what not to do is not to just make this okay. Because part of me just wants to be just let him leave his camera off. My God. But I know that that's not actually good, because he's not, with his camera off, he is less engaged in the class. And so we're working super small, have your camera on for 1 minute as the teacher is doing a check-in. And so just starting to try to, it's almost to desensitize him to what's causing the stress and anxiety with this. We're not having any success yet, but we're working on it.
Baby steps. And usually with anxiety, that's it. It's that scaffolding. It's that little bits at a time and praising every step along the way.
Hi, my name is Rosa, and I have a daughter. She's a sophomore, and I'm hearing that a lot of her friends as well are struggling with anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And we often want to refer or use that referral form because they're not open to doing it themselves, to seek the help at least directly, or even call the suicide prevention line. So I'm wondering how that form works. Does it take 24 hours or so to get a response? How prompt, I guess, is the reach out?
Yeah. So you're talking about the referral link that I put out?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically what happens when you send a referral, it pops up on my phone. I read it. What I do is through the day is I screen them, obviously for safety concerns. Sometimes I'm waitlisted. So I would say if it's a crisis, I would definitely not use that referral link. I would, use a crisis service, which I can share with you all, just in case. But as far as sending a referral, I'm the one that gets it. I share it with my intern. We discuss who's going to reach out to the family, and it usually happens within a day or two.
And that's another question that comes up often is the contact just with the student, or will the family be engaged? Because a lot of times the kids want to just vent and maybe get through whatever they're dealing with, their feelings or thoughts, and they're not having that kind of communication with their parents, right? And so they do want that neutral, safe space to go to. So is there contact with parents or not?
So it's interesting because the way I'm having to do things is a little bit differently. Typically, I would call them out of class. We would meet a couple times. I'm not required to have parent consent for the first 3 sessions. So it's a lot easier. Now, what I'm finding difficult is tracking them down without calling their home number. So my first thing is I reach out to them via School Loop. I send them a Zoom link, and then hopefully they respond that way. But I don't call the house and spill all their, information at all. That's not something I do. I typically will only reach out to parents immediately if I felt like they were in danger, if they were expressing, very strong suicidal ideation that had plans accompanied with it. So it's definitely something where I know that that's not something that you want to talk about with your family necessarily, you know, but keeping in mind the safety concerns. So, and that's something on a referral link that can be written. Like, it's really important that, you know, you talk directly to the student first, and I'll do my best to reach out to them and hope that they respond to me. But it's definitely something where we understand that that's not a conversation you always have with people who are closest to you.
Okay. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It does.
Okay.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult to get in touch with kiddos. I mean, literally before I could pull them out of class and come in. And so really trying to navigate that has been difficult. And, you know, I always pride myself on meeting kids for the first time, and then, you know, they're okay with it and they enjoy it. It's much more difficult to do via email. I'm not that charming on email. So like, it's been a struggle for sure.
Yvonne, there was a comment in the chat about, you know, when the parent has extreme anxiety themselves and then the child is having anxiety and then it turns to anger and yelling at each other. So I don't know if you have any advice.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would definitely say it's back to that modeling. You know, I have a son who's exactly, my husband says exactly like me. It's scary. And we, you know, both struggle with anxiety and notice that we're both more irritable when that happens. And so we've kind of come up with this plan of like, I'm not feeling you right now. You're not feeling me. I'm not really into this right now. I'm going to take my time out, take yours, and we'll come together when we can. It's not like pressure to do that, but that's taken years for us to get to, because it was always that head to head, but knowing that this isn't helpful for either of us, you know, engaging in this right now. And we both know that this is our anxiety and not us. So let's just take a time out, you know, before we come back to each other. And sometimes that requires him to lock me out of his room or me to lock him out of mine. When you know, when you want to fight and you're like ready to go, and the other person has to be, you know, big enough to say, hey, I'm going to take a time out. So just modeling that you can do that we can come back to this, we can revisit. That'd be my suggestion.
So thank you, Yvonne, for meeting with my daughter yesterday. I didn't really hear how that went, but I suspect it was a good conversation.
It was.
Good. So here's I'm just going to throw a scenario out for the group to hear that it's just something I'm dealing with and my wife and I are dealing with. My daughter's sleep hours are all tweaked, and of course she has been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And this is what happens when kids have fairly somewhat severe anxiety and depression, is their sleep schedule can get thrown off. So I get up in the middle of the night to let the dogs out, and I hear her talking on the phone in the middle of the night, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, you know, and I know she's got school and she's got other things to do. And it's like, and, you know, do I let it go because I don't want to add to the depression and anxiety? What I'm going to be doing, and sometimes it's hard, even with my daughter staying home and me staying home, to actually make time with her to talk, because she lives in her cave. But to just, you know, talk with her about it and see what she has to say about it. You know, I you know, from one perspective, of course, she has school the next day. She should be making an effort to get to sleep. She shouldn't be on the stinking phone, parent talking. From her perspective, I'm not going to sleep anyway. I need an outlet. I need to talk to my friends. Mm-hmm. And I see both sides. So, you know, my wife she had to get up early this morning, and she heard her making noise in her room, talking on her phone probably. And she's like, we got to do something about this. It's like, well, yeah, I get that. And so I'll talk with her and just see where she's coming from on it, and see which, you know, I mean, she's a smart girl. She knows she needs to get her sleep, but she just can't. And as a parent, is coming to terms. Oh, I'm getting feedback. Somebody needs to go on mute. Part of the problem as a parent is learning to recognize what are valid things going on with her that you can't just say suck it up on, and stop doing that, and you know, get more mature or whatever. And you know, it's hard. Anyway, that's just one thing I'm dealing with today is, you know, why did she and when she comes to school in the morning, I have to kind of sneak up to her door and listen, because she doesn't come out. She doesn't have any breakfast. She doesn't say, hi, I'm awake. She just turned on the computer, and she's pretty good at it. She's, had a little bit of issue with absences, but mostly not. So she's been pretty good there, but I don't really know. And one day she did oversleep, so that sticks with you.
Definitely. I find it harder too as your kids get older, having a senior, it's like, okay, I need to let him be responsible for himself. But all right, if I hear you playing Fortnite at 4:30 and you have a class at 8:30, I have to say something, right? So finding that balance of like, even he knows when he's being ridiculous, like, okay, it's 2, okay, fine, I'm going to pick my battles. But 4, come on, you have to be up in 4 hours and we know how this is going to play out. So, well,
I don't know, maybe she slept from 10 till 3 and now she's up at 4. I don't know. You can imagine how it could be somewhat valid, and you can imagine where maybe she's just not making good decisions or something. So it's hard to know. So I think it's about bringing up the subject and listening to what she has to say, and it's right from wrong, and I hope she's making good enough decisions. So try to help her with
one
that.
way I kind of brought it up the other day is my son was up early doing work, and I was like, "Who are you?" And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, how many hours did you get last night? He's like, I don't know, like 7. I'm like, wow, did you notice the connection between how many you got and what the heck is happening right now? Because I don't even recognize you. And he kind of processed it. So I hope to plant a seed in there. I don't know if I did.
You plant the seeds and see what happens. I do that with my wife too.
That's all we could do.
Yeah, sometimes. Anyway.
Yeah, Mark, I want to tag onto that because, I very much can relate to what you've been going through. And, I've shared with all of you guys that my daughter has pretty severe depression and anxiety herself. And not being able to fall asleep is a symptom of that. I mean, so she legitimately has a hard time falling asleep and staying asleep, and then we'll have she's been dealing with nightmares and things like that, and so that is a cause of concerns. We talked to the doctor about it, and I don't ever want to push medication, but I mean, her doctor is like, well, let's try this mild sleeping medication, and that seems to be helping, to be completely honest. But I think when you're dealing with a teenager as opposed to a smaller child, with a smaller child, you'd be like, no, this is what you're going to do. You're going to take your medicine or whatever. When you're dealing with a teenager, they really have to buy into, yes, sleep is a problem. I need to get more sleep.
They're a vocal stakeholder in their lives now.
Exactly. And so that, having that conversation and really getting to them the point, and that's with my daughter, because we've been dealing with this a long time, and she was like, no, it's fine. And she actually finally admitted that this is a problem. I'm, and it compounds on everything else, right? Because if they aren't sleeping, then they are struggling to get up in the morning, not just to get up and get on their Zooms and get to their class, but then to do the work that they're supposed to do outside of the class. They don't have the motivation because they're super tired. And I've just noticed, and this is something we've really recently been dealing with, but in the past week where my daughter has been getting more sleep, she's been getting more work done. She comes out of her room more. We do have conversations, which is nice.
How old is your daughter?
She is 17.
Okay.
And so, so sleep, and, Yvonne and I will do a parent Zoom specifically about the issue of sleep, but it is just so important.
Yep.
One thing that kind of pops up for me is when I think back of my days of really bad anxiety and depression, it was very terrifying to be alone with my thoughts. And so when you think about falling asleep, you're alone and there's a lot of thoughts going on. And so I think those distractions, phones, it's not about just, social stuff. It's about, feeling like you're drowning and finding something to cling on to get you out of those thoughts. And so talking with friends and watching YouTube videos, for some students, that's like a lifeline, so really just, you think about how many thoughts you have in bed, multiply that by 10, and that's what's happening for kids with generalized anxiety disorder. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. It took many, many years before I could lay in my bed and be okay. I
just want to say I relate to what Shannon C is saying on the chat about don't want to look on School Loop and see all the zeros. Absolutely, I know it's and my daughter fully knows that she wants to graduate with the rest of her class, and this isn't going to help, and she still just struggles with it. And I I've gotten past the anger and the frustration, and it's just, how can I help? How can I help? And just we started her seeing a therapist this summer, and I got engaged with a psychiatrist just last week, and he's kind of fast tracking. Don't get scared about this, but fast tracking a decision on medication because her case is fairly, I'll call it severe, and so why waste time? And my wife and I, my mom, there's a Freudian slip. My wife and I, obviously don't want to put our kid on medication, and I don't think April wants to be on medication either, but she wants help. And so she's willing to try, and so we are too.
Yeah. I'm into, I'm at 3 years in of my son being on medication, and they're weaning him off right now. And I don't know what we would have done without it. And it was such a hard choice. I totally understand. And everybody's different, but I honestly feel like it saved his life.
What I want to go back to what some stuff in the chat, Shannon, like opening up School Loop. God, I totally, because with my daughter, it's Canvas, but I'm like, I told Hannah a couple weeks ago, I'm like, listen, I haven't opened it. And I gave her, I'm like, I'm going to look at it on Thursday. And so you've got until Thursday to clean some stuff up, because I don't think it's going to be good. And she still didn't clean, it was still bad. But, one thing that we've been trying, is like, she's like, well, I want a new pair of jeans. Okay, I'm going to buy you that new pair of jeans, but I need all of those zeros in first. And so making little deals with them, because I think we want them to have always like, the higher intrinsic motivation that they want to graduate from high school. And for a lot of our kids, that's not maybe the thing right now. And so, using what you can. Yvonne, there was some other questions in here, because I know we're running short of time. Advice on what's helpful to say besides just listening. So maybe that's a good thing to close with, about like for parents, like what is a helpful thing when our kids are dealing with all this?
Yeah, I think just validating it, man, that sounds like a lot that you're going through. Like, hey, whatever it is you need, I'm here for you, and I'm proud of what you've been able to do. Like, just super, I guess, yeah, like validating. I know this sucks. I know this is hard, and I'm here for whatever you need. I stand by you through this. It's going to be tough, but I, appreciate you sharing that with me. It's hard. I'm looking at that comment again about the zeros. And, one of the things that I always think about is, when I yell at my kid about a zeros, does that change what he's going to do? No, it just makes him pissed off at me. So it doesn't really change the outcome. It just changes how he feels about me. And so sometimes I do have to step back. And if that means I have to watch him fail once in a while, I don't like it, but it doesn't, I have to keep my blood pressure low, and I have enough grays at it as it is. So, just acknowledging that they're struggling, and acknowledging that things are hard, and letting them know, hey, when you're ready to talk, if you want to talk, or if you want to talk to someone else, I'm here, or we can find you somebody else. But just normalizing it. Yeah, it's a stressful time.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a great time to teach my child to advocate for himself, not allowing those zeros to pile up, stay on top of them. But when he's like, well, I don't understand that assignment, or I don't get it. Okay, this is a great time for you to email the teacher or ask a question in the chat, engage, so that's something that he's learning how to do, to advocate for himself and get help, and not just say, well, I don't know how to do it. It's a zero. Oh, well, I'm just giving up.
Virginia, thank you so much, because you said exactly what I was about to say, that, really like encouraging your kids to speak up for themselves and open up to their teachers. If they have a bunch of zeros, they haven't been getting work in, it's not that they don't care. I have that firm belief of all our students. It's not that they don't care. It's that, they have been stressed, they have been anxious, they haven't been sleeping, the motivation is really, really low. And just having them email the teacher and be like, it's been rough. This is like how I've been feeling, but I want to do better. I want to get these assignments in, and, and it makes a big difference. I think for them also, for their own psyche, it helps them to take ownership of that. Where it's not just you as the parent caring about it. Like, it takes, like, when the kid has advocated for themselves, they have that sense of ownership. And I think that that's actually, it's a helpful thing. It kind of kills two birds, right? That they're, doing something about the problem, but then it'll make them feel better. And it can make a difference.
I also agree with your comment, Jenny, about the rewarding. At the end of the school day, when my son says, okay, mom, I'm going to play my PlayStation. Well, let me see, has all your work been turned in? And before, I used to get well, I'll just do that later. Why? When you could just do it now and not have to worry about stopping playing your game or talking to your friends, and just do it now, get it over with, and you're free for the rest of the day. So that was a challenge going through like 7th and 8th grade. Now he understands, and they're like, okay, mom, my school's done, my class is done, all my work's turned in, garbage is thrown out, I'm free. Okay, you're free to go. Have fun. You don't have to, I don't have to check in with you because you've done everything that I've expected you to do. And that has seemed to be very helpful.
We just have to find our leverage.
Right.
Whatever gives that.
And one thing I can't remember when I don't remember if I was in a separate meeting when I made this suggestion. But, I saw somebody made, that it seems like during distance learning, teachers aren't updating School Loop as often. And that's probably true, because most teachers are using Google Classroom, and there is additional steps that they have to take to upload everything from Google Classroom into School Loop. Actually, Google Classroom and School Loop just in the past, I want to say 5 days, started talking to each other better, because it used to be like, basically they would have to download a spreadsheet and line them up and like transfer them all by hand, which was a huge pain in the butt. Like, this is something, honestly, in the past week that now is much easier. So hopefully, actually, you'll start, as parents, start seeing School Loop updated more regularly. But one thing that you could do as a parent is maybe not necessarily look in School Loop, but have your child show them their Google Classroom. Because if they had to submit something, it will say that it's been submitted. And so, have them show you that, as like, okay, did you get everything done that you were supposed to do today? Just like you're suggesting, like, okay, you can do this, but you got to show me this first.
I have one question for you guys before we end here, and it has to do with Shannon's message. Raise your hand if your kid has ever said, I know, I know. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, thank you guys. I feel like we could have kept talking about this for the next 3 hours. So I'm cutting you off, but I do have a meeting coming up, so I have to go. So next week, so there is a counseling presentation for seniors that's happening next Wednesday, and the senior parent night is on Tuesday of next week. And so the counselors, just like we did last week, where the counselors were here about the 9th and 10th grade, they're going to be joining us next week and talk about 12th grade issues. So if you are the parent of a 12th grader, this would be a really good one. They aren't going to do the presentation again, but so you should definitely pay attention to the counseling presentation. And this is for any follow-up questions that you think of after the fact. Okay, you guys have a wonderful day. Keep doing those things that you're doing to manage your stress, because any way that you can that works for you, it's really, really important. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.